do our business. Wanted to recognize, are there any interns? Jason.
The other direction.
All right, so we don't have any interns
Your
to introduce.
Jay White.
I'm right here.
Right there.
Mini me. So Jason, stand up. Jason wave. Jason White. He's interning with the Office of Counsel this week. He doesn't go by Jay's son, but he is Jay White's son. But anyway, welcome, Jason. Glad he has really participated in all the meetings. He's been amazing, and he's added some content to some of the meetings that I know I was in earlier this week. So we thank you for your work, Jason. Hope you enjoyed your time, and speak of us kindly. Thank you. So, want to make sure you all understand the members of this committee are hereby advised of their duty under any adherence, conflict, or instruction refrain from participating in any matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or appearance of conflict. We're going to move into the minutes, which were posted on SharePoint, and I would ask, I hope that you've had an opportunity to look at those. They appear to be in order to me. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes at this point in time and adopt them? Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Marcy to go through the finance report.
So can you hear me okay? So the Finance and Audit Committee met and reviewed the financial statements for the second quarter, and we moved at this time to recommend to the Executive Committee to approve the financial statements for the second quarter.
It does not need to be seconded. Any questions about the finance report? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Also recommends there's the Executive Council's recommendation council approval of Ryan McGee with Bernard Robinson and Company as accountant in charge of our 2022 costs.
That comes as a recommendation of Finance and Audit Committee. Is there any questions? All in favor with selecting that group as an auditor for the coming year, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Personal observance leave as a paid floating holiday that employees use to celebrate religious holidays or other significant historical and cultural events. It is a recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee that the Executive Committee recommend to the Council to approve adoption of the personal observance leave policy, which is
It comes as a recommendation from Finance and Audit. Anybody have any questions about that policy? I think we posted that in SharePoint also. All in favor of recommending it to the council, say aye. Aye. All opposed? I'd like to recognize David Allen. Thank you for coming down. We haven't found a twin of him this week, so thank God. All right. Marcy, the appointments.
Okay, so the Appointments Advisory Committee met as well. For the Board of Legal Specialization, there are 3 appointments to be made. And the Appointments Advisory Committee moves from the Executive Committee to recommend to the Council, reappoint Matthew Ledenheim as a specialist, appoint John Berger as a bankruptcy specialist, and to appoint Julie Reeves as a public member.
Comes as a recommendation from the Appointments Committee. Does anybody have any questions of Marcy? All in favor of appointing those individuals, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
The Appointments Advisory Committee also recommends the appointment of Jan Pritchett as chair and Matthew Ledenheim as vice chair of the Board of Legal Specialization.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Next item, consider the Alta Board of Trustees appointments, and the recommendation of the Appointments Advisory Committee is to reappoint Shelby Benton and Heather Cole, and to appoint Alexander Dale from the IOLTA Board of Trustees.
This is a recommendation from the Appointments Advisory Committee. Does anybody have any questions about those appointments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the next matter, sure. Is that right?
The Appointments Advisory Committee also recommends the appointment of Shelby Benton as chair and Heather Cole as vice chair of the IOLTA Board of Trustees.
All right, any questions about that? All right, all in favor of those appointments say aye. Aye. All opposed?
So the Appointments Advisory Committee has an add-on, and we recommend the ratification of President's reappointment of David Addison to the State Grievance Resolution.
That's something that the governor, we sent the recommendation to the governor appoints that individual actually. And the governor's already appointed that individual.
So ratifying.
Based on our recommendation, we just didn't ratify it within the council. So all in favor of ratifying my appointment or my recommendation to the governor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That's short. All right. The next matter, item 4, is the apportionment of large councilor seats. Call upon our own Peter to explain all that, what that happens.
Sure. So every 6 years by statute, the state bar has to reapportion the 16 at-large council seats that are divided amongst the larger judicial districts based off of the lawyer population in those districts. And so every 6 years we have to do this calculation and apportionment, and the time is coming in to do it. In 2016, we established a newer procedure for how we would allocate these at-large counselors. And so what we did in June in June was to run this procedure and see what the outcome was going to be. So we took the lawyer population at that time. On July 5th, as of July 5th, we took that lawyer population and ran this procedure in this, following the steps that were established in the policy in 2016. When you do that, you account for the one counselor that every district gets, and then you look at the districts that in theory could qualify for a second counselor based off of the ratio of number of lawyers in their district versus the average number of lawyers per judicial districts across the state. And when you do that calculation, if after subtracting the one lawyer that everyone gets, if your district has still a higher number, a single digit, a full digit number, one of the at-large counselors. Well, when we did this calculation this time, it actually ended up that the only 2 districts ended up with a actual still single whole digit number after doing that calculation and that subtraction, which was Wake County and Mecklenburg County, that still would be eligible for 7 additional counselors each. So that that allowed us to then say, well, we don't have to go to the policy about if there's too many districts that are qualified. You go to the policy enough districts that are fully qualified for an at-large counselor, and then you go to the districts that are the closest to having a eligibility for an at-large counselor to fill those, and those 2 are District 16, which was very close to being deserving of a full extra counselor, and District 24. The real change here, and you can look at all the materials and look at the sheets and the policies. The overall large change is that Forsyth County would no longer be eligible for having the second counselor. If I recall, that was going to be the outcome in 2016 as well, and the policy that we adopted allowed that to maintain for another 6 years. But the population changes of lawyers is just really hard to do anything about, in the sense that Mecklenburg and Wake County are just growing at such an enormously faster rate. And you can see the rate of change over time here from these larger counties. And so the outcome of that would be that any counselor who's already serving has the ability to serve out their term. So it doesn't automatically go get eliminated. And so if this was to be the apportionment that was adopted by the council, then Kevin's seat, when he's just started his third term, when his term is over, that seat would go away. So we wouldn't, nobody currently serving on the council would lose any time that they had already been entitled to. It's just going forward, Forsyth County would only have one seat, and Mecklenburg and Wake would have 7 additional seats, and Durham and Greensboro would each still have 1 additional at-large seats. So it's.
Peter, where is this in the material?
It's in the executive committee agenda, item number 4 in the bookmark. It has the all of the spreadsheets and policies and the step-by-step application of it.
Yeah. Now, so the new seat for White County would not come into effect until Kevin's. Go ahead, come into effect.
Go ahead and come into
Back,
effect,
yeah.
but Kevin's
Beginning in
allowed to
January.
work out his term.
Beginning in January.
So they have elections fall.
So we would have an extra
Well,
counselor essentially.
No, it'd be Mecklenburg picks up that.
Mecklenburg, I'm sorry, Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg.
We got too many in Raleigh.
Don't get excited.
I don't want to go.
And Kevin, your term ends.
Correct. So we would carry an extra counselor for that period of time.
That's correct.
Does anybody have any, we wanted to apply E equals MC squared, but we felt like his formula was better, so there you go.
Just a little background on it, for those of you who weren't on the council in 2016.
Yeah, microphone.
For those of you who weren't on the council in 2016, we were using a formula that had been used for a number of times in this process. A lawyer who was actually from Chatham County objected and said that it really wasn't statistically valid. So we actually went through a very complicated process of trying to come up with a statistical method of making this apportionment, which was fairer. It's clearly not as fair as it possibly could be because we don't have enough at-large seats to make it totally fair. But the formula, if you read it, it's complicated to read. If you look at the next set of documents that we provided you where it's applied, it makes a whole lot more sense as you read through it. And we think it's a good formula to use. It's actually not memorialized in our rules or in our policies. So in October, we'll come back to you with a proposed rule amendment and a policy on this, just so we can memorialize it for 6 years from now to make sure that we have a clear record. My thinking is we put the formula in our policies so that if we decide there needs to be an adjustment to the formula, it can be done more readily than if it's in our rules, which require the whole rulemaking process that we have to go through. So that's the plan, but the formula I think has been vetted pretty thoroughly as to its validity.
I just want to make it clear, this does not give David Allen an extra term of council. So we need to have a motion to adopt or accept this recommendation, giving Mecklenburg County an extra counselor, and upon Kevin Williams, his term ending, Forsyth County would lose that seat. So do I have a motion with regards to sending that to the council on Friday? Do I have a second for that? Second. All right, any discussion?
Darren, before voting, I'd like to understand the math a little better. Now, you can see the chart that Peter was talking about. Would you walk us through that again?
Sure. So the first thing that you do in the procedure is establish a number of every district gets based off of the judicial districts, and then you have those 16 additional counselors. And then you determine the active members in the judicial districts by taking the full number of active members of the bar at the time you do it, which was in the sheet at 31,555, and divide that by the number of judicial districts to get an average number of lawyers per judicial district, which is 733. And then you divide the number of lawyers in each judicial district at the same time by that average. And so anyone who has over 733 would end up with a single, at least one single digit ratio after step A. But then you subtract one counselor from each district because that's what each district is already assigned. And then any districts then that are left over that have still a ratio that's higher than 1 would be eligible for that additional at-large council seat. After we did that, which is step B there, really only 2 districts fit that criteria as being eligible for additional counselors, and that's Mecklenburg and Wake, each being eligible for 7 additional counselors based off of their extremely large population. So then you have to move to step C, which is the total number of members representing eligibility, which is 14. And so since there are 2 unallocated counselors, you move to step D in that process, which is you take the 2 districts, since there are 2, you take the 2 districts that have the largest fraction of a whole number, and until you take those districts until you've filled the unallocated seats. And so that's there were 2 to be filled, and that is 16 and 24 Durham and Forsyth. If you notice or Durham and Guilford, excuse me. If you notice that it's close. It's always been close between Durham, Guilford, and Forsyth, but the growth rate of those has been different over the last 6 to 12 years. As you can see on page 112, Forsyth has actually had a decrease in lawyers in that time frame, whereas Mecklenburg and Wake have had 13-14% growth and a large increase in lawyers. And so the proportion now is just so much larger in those 2 districts that the remaining 2 districts that could possibly get it is always going to be a battle between Durham, Guilford, and Forsyth, and one of them is going to be left out.
Next time it's going to be looked at as 6 years.
That would be, yeah, that's by statute. We reallocate every 6 years, and unless the legislature allocates us more at-large counselors, it's always set at 16. That's in the statute.
Just because I know I'm going to get obviously a ton of questions about this. How did the math change from 16 to now? I mean, like, what happened? Just explain it to me like I'm an idiot.
Sure. Really the Guilford and Durham, their ratios grew, or really Mecklenburg's grew faster than the ratio than Forsyth grew, to a point where Forsyth was not even eligible for having an additional at-large counselor based on this policy. If they had that eligibility for an at-large counselor, then we would have had to do a different calculation. But since only Wake and Mecklenburg qualify under this step B that we adopted for an eligible counselor, they get all of the ones that they're eligible for, which is 7 each extra. And so there are only 2 left over to allocate to the districts that were not eligible under that step to get additional counselors.
But what changed from 16 to 22?
Mecklenburg grew faster.
You mean something you want to know about?
The formula was that actually ends up being the same as what we had. We didn't change the formula from 16. The process that we did in 16 is the same. This is the one we developed and approved in 16.
No. I'm just trying to figure
We're doing what we changed and agreed to in 16.
My phone starts ringing.
Yeah, right. So we didn't change anything from the 16 process, which is,
So
we
even
changed.
before
Yeah.
16, if we had used the old
This-
formula,
probably what's
It'd be
going
the
on.
same outcome, that's right, yes.
It's just because of the growth.
Yeah, the growth is just so much higher.
I have probably stuff for me, and I can probably work from home.
Yes.
I'll do that. I actually don't think we can really have much of a.
Cool.
My recommendation.
Yeah, and that.
But for site, the bottom line is the second Forsyth County seat is going to Mecklenburg.
That's right, yeah.
That's
And it would have been, it would have been that way under any formula we've ever used.
It's because Mecklenburg grew, not because Forsyth.
Well, it's the combination. Forsyth had a decrease and Mecklenburg grew astronomically, continued to.
Forsyth grew, and so there are less lawyers.
That's right, yeah.
So how many councilors does Mecklenburg have now? 6, and now they'll get 7.
They have 6 at large and have 7 total, and now they will have 7 at large and 8 total. Yeah.
Which is the same.
Which is the same as what Wake County has.
They both don't have an
And actually.
Just tell me to
Yeah, I can go and take the fire for it if you need, but there's no, we did the same process we did in 2016, the procedure that Catherine's office drafted up, and even if you had done the old process before, it would have been even probably more lopsided for Wake and Mecklenburg as well.
So if the trends continue,
They will all be there.
they'll all be in Wake and Mecklenburg counties.
That's
There's only 2 more to go.
That's right, and it's,
Disappear.
that's right.
Maybe it's down to.
That's right, it would have to be a legislative change, but it's something that could be something that gets looked at.
Because you've got over a third of the lawyers in those 2 counties.
Well, I don't understand that.
Over 14,000, I think it is, or in Mecklenburg. 11,000, 11% of the active attorneys. So that's, I agree, Kevin, it's sort of like, we want to fix it, but the only way to fix it is to have an increase in counselors.
So you could cap the number of councilors.
Yeah, I think we'd have to put that in the statute, yeah. Because right now it just says they need to be spread out based off of the number of lawyers in the district, and their ratio is just so much higher.
Yeah, I have a question. Any other questions about that? I remember back 6 years ago, we had a similar sort of, where's this one? In that, a non-council from Orange County, I think it was.
Barbara, yeah.
Yeah, he was worried that they,
What was it?
15A at that time was going to lose a counselor, but they lost a counselor anyway.
I also remember Ray having some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the conversation with Ray and Jim Robbins.
So, all right. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to send this to the council tomorrow. Any other questions? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
You're my witnesses.
We're going to note it in the big letters. Kevin Williams said no.
You want that specifically recorded?
All right, item number 5. The first item is subsection A, which deals with the CLE rules, and I'm going to recognize Peter to talk about that. It actually is what you need to be looking at is the addendum A, because it has some additional information. So Peter, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So the addendum has some additional proposed amendments from the CLE board. The CLE board met in July and reviewed all of the comments that we received after publication, which were very numerous and very well done. We got some great comments and suggestions and questions, and I worked to answer and respond to every comment that we could get or that we received. I also went around and met with various district bars and organizations to present the rules and make sure that everyone was aware of the proposals and receive additional comments from those meetings. And after review, the board considered the comments and particularly the comments were heavily weighted towards opposition against the elimination of carryover credit. And we heard the board was convinced by the comments that there was some value in retaining some carryover credit. So one of the proposals from the board is to allow up to 6 hours of carryover credit at the end of your reporting period, which will give lawyers some lawyers want a buffer that make sure that they're not going to end up 1 hour short. You know, they want to feel like they have some comfort, or it does not disincentivize a lawyer from taking a course at the end of the reporting period that they might not need the credit for, so they can get, you know, they can take a course that they're interested in. We felt 6 was an appropriate number. These carryover credits would not satisfy any of your specialty credits for the next period. So they would not transfer over as ethics hours or substance abuse hours or tech hours. You have to take those. The board wanted lawyers to keep those in each reporting period. And so these would only transfer over as a total part of your total hours requirement. So whatever, you know, even if you took 6 extra ethics hours in one period, they would just transfer over as 6 hours. They would not satisfy your ethics requirements. So that's one of the big proposals. A really big proposal is to make sure that these rules do not go into they would not become effective until March of 2024. So pushing it off a year. The original plan was to have it be March of 2023, so the next CLE year, but we want to make sure that we have time to get this right, have it implemented right, have it properly communicated, and have everyone aware of whatever rules become effective, you know, what their responsibilities are going to be, so we're not rushing to try to do this in a real short time frame. So the proposal is to put that off by another year. There are other little tweaks, but those are the two largest ones from this proposed set of changes. I believe you all may have received a letter from Gordon, or he had sent it to some of us with a comment that was received last week before the meeting, and Gordon and I had a chance to talk. The board has proposed also that they would like these rules to be republished again for another quarter to receive another set of comment before this body votes on approval or adoption, because of the significance of these changes, to have another full republication. And so I spoke with Gordon about that, and he was amenable to that, which would also give time for the CLE board to meet and consider Gordon's letter and have a chance to address anything that they want from that request, and the comments that we'll be able to get a chance to look at that and make any recommendations. I was convinced by many counselors here today, or yesterday and today, and from Gordon's letter. I think it would be appropriate if someone would be interested in making a motion for an amendment to these rules that would eliminate the state bar counselor exemption from CLE. I think I have copies here, but it essentially would just strike the state bar counselors out from that rule. And it would still keep the exemption for the bar examiners, because that has been historically there. This would just strike out the state bar counselors from getting the CLE exemption. I had a lot of feedback from all of you that it was gonna not go over very well in your district, and so the CLE board would be fine with that. And I think we would, if Warren would make that motion to amend the proposed amendments from the CLE board, and we can publish all of that again in a quarter and come back in October and discuss things further.
All right, so what we need though is we need a motion to republish these rules with the exclusion of the CLE exemption for counselors. I think Warren now is your motion. Now her second. Warren, make a second to that.
I have a question point to just discuss something.
Yes, sir.
Is Cabarrus meets more routinely than some of the other larger districts. Do we want to come back in October and make that decision, or come back in December when every council, every judicial district, or every district should have met by the end of the year? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're not tied to doing a vote in October.
Okay.
I mean, that's the general process. But if we feel that there's a need to push this back some more because we need to get it right. Having that year of buffer before these would become effective gives us that chance to make sure that we get it right. But I'd be willing to go anywhere and talk with anyone and meet at any time.
It's not a point that I'm thinking that we're not getting it right. What I'm looking at is people that are not going to look at it, not going to read it, and all of a sudden it's going to come out and then they're going to say, "What? Nobody ever told me anything."
Right. There's always going to be that no matter how hard we try. But I'm happy to meet with anyone or go anywhere. I think we'll probably plan on doing a YouTube town hall situation where I can present the rules and let people ask questions or make comments in the chat of YouTube, and we'll do that for all the lawyers.
And then the second is last 6 hours. I mean, instead of well, that was just an appropriate number that we came up with, and I'm hearing we'll pull it out of the air. I know that didn't happen.
Well, the board still did not want to have a large number of carryover hours. They were worried that if you had too large of a number of carryover hours, that you could front load to a point where you were not having to take CLE for a significant period of time if it is still the 3-year reporting period. And so the real reason that they felt compelled to bring carryover back was people a buffer so they do not have to go feel like they're having to hit an exact number, that they have a little bit of flexibility, but also to not disincentivize, if you want to take a course that might take you over the hour. So they weren't bringing it back to let people want them to get really far ahead. It was just for those two compelling reasons.
I appreciate that. I'm just trying to figure out the number 6.
Well, it's half 12.
Does that change the number of bar counselors we have?
You just put it all together.
Matt, we're not going to a case, okay? Mr. Rawls.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Peter, did you address the letter from Anthony Monahan, Public Defender's Office in Mecklenburg County? Is that addressed somewhere? I didn't get all into the weeds of the CLE changes because I know I have spoken there a number of times and talked about recent ethics opinions, and Catherine Jean helped me prepare a paper one time where I talked about the disciplinary process here in the bar. But it's very helpful and it's well attended, usually 30, 40, sometimes 50 lawyers in Charlotte. And so I would be concerned if a requirement that they pay for the application would necessarily shut this down. It would be a loss.
Oh yes, the CLE board, we discussed those comments. We received a few of them, and we definitely are committed. The board is committed to not causing disincentive to these providers being able to offer very free or low-cost CLE. The rule already allows, it says that the provider offering free CLE would pay a reduced, be subject to a reduced application fee. We have met, and the board is going to be meeting. The board's going to be meeting in August to do a proposed fee schedule, and I think it's likely that that there's going to be a real attempt to make sure that it's either so significantly reduced that it is not a burden or free for someone who's offering.
Yeah, I would recommend a fee waiver.
Yeah, we're gonna. They definitely. We didn't make a change to the rule about it, but because we want some of the flexibility when doing a fee schedule, which still will have to be approved by the council. But I think there's real intent to make sure that that's not going to be a problem.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
So in this fee schedule that you're speaking about, who determines where the fees fall in or the entities fall into the fee schedule? Is it the entire board or is it staff?
So it would be, the fee schedule will have it laid out based off of, the board would have the ability to design it to say if you are legal services organization or government entity offering free CLE and all those kind of things. We'll be doing some categories, and we'll be doing I think something to look at. Arbitrators that was, they have really long courses 30-hour courses, but low attendance. And so they would have to bear a big brunt of application fees if they don't, if there's not something to, consider, attendance size or anticipated attendance. So I think the CLE board's going to look at that too as well. But once the fee schedule is set, it would be approved. That would be approved by the council, by the board, and then sent to the council for adoption. And then in terms of administering that, to the CLE staff to make those decisions.
And then my next question is the board married to the 6 hours? Would they, because I agree that 6 hours to me, first glance, would just seem really, really low in the overall scheme of 36 hours. I mean, and if you compare it to what's been happening before, I think that you still would get a lot of people who, you're gonna get things on both sides. You're gonna get people doing both front loading, and you're gonna get a lot of people who don't. So, it seems to me like a 10 somewhere even.
I agree with Dorothy. I mean, I'd say there's an obsession with the front loading. I mean, you still got, there's gonna be plenty of people who have to just do the end. They're gonna have 36 hours they gotta make. I don't quite get why the board is so worried about that. People get their hours in.
No, I mean, this was a compromise that the board, I'm not, I speak for the board, but they felt this was a good compromise spot based off of what they had originally done for proposing the elimination and listening to the reasons that they felt were compelling for bringing it back. But again, if we continue to receive comment, and if the council goes, these rules are ultimately determined by the council, and so we'll continue to receive feedback from you and from the lawyers, and the board will meet again and we'll review those, and then when it comes time to move in for making changes, if that is the will of the council, then we'll probably deal with it.
So I'm concerned about it. I want it to be that we send a message that we heard you. We heard everyone and their comments and concerns about this. And to me, 6 hours is kind of like we're going to give you a little piece of something, as opposed to something really meaningful.
Probably 6 hours is generally a one-day still.
Yeah.
That's probably where that came up with.
And conferences are usually not, I mean, you know what I'm saying, a lot of these people that do these like once a year, they get all their CLE in one, that's not gonna be 6 hours, that would be probably get only making carry over, just to be distancing way. That's useful. I'll be back in a moment, I guess.
But I'm interested in something. I know we're on this motion already.
There's a substitute ability, but
I mean, I know friendly amendments are not really a thing.
so, is there any further discussion or questions or motions? All in favor of publishing the CLE rules again with the amendments, including, yes?
I would like to make it, I thought you were just dealing with the one amendment, not the publishing part.
It's for publishing.
Because I would like to amend that motion to include an amendment from the 6 hours to increase it to 10 hours.
I think you would have to get his approval, but I think you can make a substitute.
So Dorothy, what I'm thinking is if we do it back to 12, then we're just going back, and then we can't come back to 6 if the board. I mean, let's do 6, see what the response is, and then if the board gets a lot of response at 12, then we'll.
Oh, I was
the board can go. Well, I'm sorry, 10, 12. I guess I don't have an objection either way, frankly, but it's just.
It's important to let the board respond, that Peter will hear that message back to the board. But this is a complicated thing because it involves how we program to keep track of all these hours. And I think the board is also, the key here is incentivizing lawyers to stay competent. And I think that's been their guiding light and their concern about allowing too many hours to roll forward. Yes, we're going to have lawyers who do it at the last minute. This is all true. But we need to set this up in the best way to incentivize lawyers to not just take, one person, never take another person. They stay, up to speed year after year. So my thinking is let's take those comments back to the CLE board. We bought ourselves some time by delaying the implementation of this. Let the CLE board respond and either tell you why they think 6 is the right number. Yeah, we can work with 10 or 12. And the 10 is, Peter made a joke about 6 or 12, but actually that's something we need to think about when we are implementing the programming for this stuff too.
Well, and I appreciate that, Alice. I would be in agreement. I understand what you're saying, and I would be in agreement with that if we had gotten a reason for the 6 hours other than what we got, which was we just kind of came up, we just came up with 6 hours.
Let me ask this, were they uncomfortable with the fact that we already had 12, that was too much, given that if you had 12 in the next year, you only have 12 required. If you can carry over, then you guaranteed yourself you didn't even have to take any CLE the next year because of 12. Is that part of what was already there?
I think the board was comfortable with 12 when it was an annual reporting period, but they felt that by extending the reporting period, we were kind of providing the same level of flexibility that the carryover was doing in the first place, other than that potential maybe going over in your third year, potentially losing some hours. And so that was the trade-off that they were willing to do when we first originally proposed eliminating carryover credit. And we came back after hearing the comments and went to 6. I was going to echo what Alice said, and because the way I appreciated what my conversation with Gordon on the same front is, the board has spent 2 years on this, and they've been taking it very seriously. And I would, with the time that we have, I think it would be helpful for the board to get a chance to look at it and address it before we make a change that they haven't seen or had a chance to even review.
That's fine to me too. I just have this whole notion that they want lawyers to stay on top of their education, and then yet they've extended this 3-year period. Already goes again. It doesn't make that doesn't.
We're gonna look at those two as well. That we're gonna go back and take a look at that based off of the comments we received and see if there's a change there for the reporting period and see if there's something there too. But we didn't have a chance to address that in Gordon's letter after that. So I'd like to give a board a chance to look at these things and potentially come back with something for you, or say we disagree with this change, and then you're free to kind of do what it is that the council still would want to do, because ultimately it's from the council. That would just, there's no requirement for it, but that would just be, I think the board would appreciate a chance to address it after hearing the concerns.
Yes, Andre.
Is it possible for us to vote favorably to go ahead and publish it, but at the same time formally go back, have a separate motion or within the motion to say that we as a committee would like the CLE committee to look at the issue of carryover a little closer? Can we do that, or do we
I
have
don't know that we need a motion for that. I think we've got the representative.
Yeah, either way it's fine, but we'll definitely.
That way we don't have to go back and do personal responses.
Well, I think the key thing right now is just that we are just publishing this, and we're back at square one where we're publishing and trying to and we're doing all the rules. So we're back to where we were 2 quarters ago when we initially published, or 1 quarter ago when we initially published. So I think getting it out and getting these comments, and counselors are welcome to send in comments as well to this. But I think that's my 2 cents about it. I would tell you that Gordon's letter was really well written and echoed a lot of myself and Alice, and I think Peter met with the leadership of the Bar Association, and they had a lot of concerns that were echoed in Gordon's email, and some of them were similar to what you said, and that was this 3-year period. Lawyers typically procrastinate, and so they're going to get
in December of year 3, like Dorothy said, whether we make a change or not, it's going to be based on the conversations we had. So I just want to get us back. We have a motion from Warren with the amendment to take out the exemption for counselors for CLE credit to publish this, and we have a second on that. Do we have any further discussion or getting published?
Just to be clear, the revised one that we have already has the 6 hours included in it, so that's part of
That's
that.
what's going to go.
And I will just quickly point out that we also put in the rule to make it clear that any carryover hours earned legitimately under the rules that were in effect at the time they were earned will carry over to the reporting period after the new rules would take effect.
So if
That was a lot of questions we had, was I'm going to lose what I've already earned, and that's not going to be the case. That will transfer over.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you. There are 2 more rules for amendments for publication. I'm not going to go into those individually other than to say they're item B and C. One deals with paralegal certification, the other one with rules of professional conduct. That rule being 1.19, dealing with sexual relations with clients prohibited, and that talks about sexting and all of those things that could occur. And I think Carmen Bannon in that subcommittee worked really hard in the ethics committee has presented that to us. But, I hope you've had a chance. I'm going to take those just as a group. Does anybody want to pull one of them and talk about them before we do so? Do I have a motion to publish those 2?
This is for adoption.
Oh, those are for adoption.
Yeah, they're published on the fast.
I move they're under
Published
five.
B and C.
They're under 5.
I move that we adopt both.
Amendments that are published.
Oh, I'm sorry, for adoption, I'm sorry. I saw published and I missed that, okay.
I would
So,
move that under 5 B and C, those be published.
well, if the motion is for them to be adopted, sent to council on Friday, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Second.
Motion for them to be adopted, second. Any questions or comments about those 2? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Item number 6, and I will draw your attention also to the addendum, but items A, B, C, and D. A deals with some disciplinary rules. B being some administrative reinstatement rules, trust accounting rules under C, and D being professional conduct 4.1. A change to that. That's just a technical change and some grammar. I would call upon you. I think I want to talk about this last one possibly on the addendum. I would call upon a motion to publish these rules in group. That's A, B, C, D, and D. Section C, 6. Yes.
Darren, I need to just advise the committee of a small wording change in the proposal to amend Rule .0902, reinstatement from inactive status. The language we will have posted for you for the council meeting. The administrative committee made a small tweak yesterday. Right now it says each calendar year in which an inactive member served as a federal district court or circuit court judge, ... The committee wanted to make sure that we were not excluding other federal judges of in other types of courts. And so the administrative committee rule, the change just says in each calendar year in which an inactive member served in the federal judiciary. And
So that covers the judiciary and federal court that actually have term limits, like federal magistrates and bankruptcy judges. So with that amendment, we have a motion to publish those rule amendments. Second. All right. Any discussion about any of those? Anybody want to pull any of those out that comment or questions?
All in favor of publishing those four amendments, say aye. Aye. All opposed. I'll draw your attention to the addendum. This is section E. Peter or Catherine, y'all want to say anything about this? Does anybody have any questions about this particular amendment? It has to do with some legislation that we dealt with earlier. I think the grievance committee went over it pretty good today, I understand.
We went over, yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions or go over it again if you want.
It creates a new sort of level of review for grievances that are public. And it came out of a request from the legislature. We negotiated things to Peter. Matt helped with that negotiation. And we're able to get a statute or a new statute that that helps, that we can live with. And now it requires us to pass a rule amendment. So we're asking to publish this rule amendment in conjunction with that new statute.
And actually, this legislation became effective July 1. We're asking that approval be to utilize those rules, even though they haven't gone through the full rule amendment publication process. And we're meeting with the Chief Justice tomorrow morning. The officers are, we'll forecast them for him, but we really don't have a choice because the statute is already effective. It's approve their immediate implementation and their publication.
So, smiling at all. So do I have a motion to publish that with the added authority for us to begin utilizing this new rule? Second. Any questions with regards to that? If you want additional information about the history of that, I will let you go to the board and talk to Peter later tonight about it. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We're running up on time, so we'll get going. Catherine, you want to talk about the litigation?
Yes, sir. David, is there anything to report on AP litigation?
Only that Mr. Roya's appeal was dismissed.
Very good, thank you for that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the rest of what's in the litigation report. If anybody has any questions?
If I have any questions of Catherine, I'm sure she'll go into it more. All right, Peter, you want to give us an update on the legislative liaison?
Sure. There was one bill passed this in the end of the session that was certainly quite important for the state bar, and so I've given I think I updated you over that via email, but the bill process was difficult, but we got to a place that we think we are comfortable with, and you know, we talked about that this bill would create a grievance review panel, but there is a second part of the bill that does give confidentiality in statute to ethics advice and ethics committee materials and actions, and so that was something that we've always operated under, you know, but was not actually in statute in the Public Records Act. So that was an agreement that they were willing to do with us too. The outcome of the bill is that we've hopefully developed a relationship with some new senators that will be willing and open to working with us in the future on other bills of importance, like a dues bill and those types of things. And so we hope to work with them over the next 6 months before the long session begins again, to have a plan where we can have additional support and hopefully some movement on some of the other bills that we've always been, the other items that we've been working towards. And so we'll be doing that, and as soon as we have a plan and we feel like there's going to be something in action, we'll get in touch with all of you to figure out what kind of support we need and how we need it. But it was not. Otherwise, it was a generally quiet, short session for the state bar. It just came at the last minute, and so we had to deal with it.
The long session begins when?
In January, after the election.
So we will be making contact with you guys in January to move to a long session on assistance. Thank you. Any questions of Peter that can't be answered? Peter, not at all. So, Evan?
Yes, sir. Once again, PNVR Cybersecurity is hanging around. It's going to be hanging around a little bit longer. We had one full committee meeting last week on July 13th, where we were looking at next steps. We had taken the recommendations of North Carolina State University students as to what their platforms and hosting recommendations were. And Leonore reached out to Alive Tech and to Standpoint. Standpoint is the group that hosts the group. And it was one of those eye-popping, head-snapping pricing quotes that were sent back. Alive Tech, which is the sort of the gold standard and the one recommended by NC State, their pricing came back north of $100,000 when you added everything up, and approximately $20,000 a year to curate and host this platform that we have created. The content is good. We did have a consensus with the full committee that our content was excellent and stand by it. We don't have a price yet back from Standpoint. It's not as flashy and fancy as the Alive Tech. It's more of a sort of punch your numbers in, take an assessment, and it doesn't have any of the fun stuff that Alive Tech is supposed to have. The Alive Tech quote was somewhat vague, non-specific, so the committee is doing several things. Catherine and Leonore are going to follow back up with Alive Tech to get more specifics and also see if we can negotiate some more reasonable pricing. Mac volunteered to look around for possible funding sources so that the state bar would not have to and could not really eat this big amount of money. Leonore is reaching out to Standpoint Decisions to try to get a price. So it was an excellent meeting for a while longer. We were hoping to have something done by October, but I think that's a little ambitious. I do want to say that we looked at various alternatives, including possibly shelving this project because of the price and putting several articles in the State Bar Quarterly. The consensus of the committee was that we have put a lot of good, hard work into this, and it's good work, but we don't want to roll out a shabby product. And so we're looking to really have an excellent product at the end of the day, and the committee members are all invested 100% in a good, excellent product. I don't know if Leonore want to add anything? Leonore? Okay. Catherine, you want to add anything?
Do we have any questions of Evan? Evan, I'm going to move on down to 13 and let you go ahead and give the ethics committee report.
Well, yeah, we had, I think we either beat or tied David Allen's record today. I think we actually beat it because David was over there intentionally running the clock out before we started. So he was grazing over there at the food bar, and with his back turned, and we were trying to go ahead and get the committee meeting started. So we started a little after 8:06 and finished a little before 9:06. And I think David Allen's record is a little bit over an hour. So and Judge Bell overruled his objections that we came in first, and so and very authoritatively overruled his objections. But basically, we have two items to present to the council tomorrow. Two proposed FEOs. The rule amendment has already been dealt with, and we're going to publish one opinion. No action from the council's needed on that. But it was a a good meeting, and we thoroughly covered everything. We didn't short anything, even though we got in under David's stuff.
Thank you. Andrea?
Sorry.
No problem.
I needed clarification from David. All right, so AP met yesterday, and the takeaways are that we had 18 complaints, 11 letters of caution were issued, 1 matter was referred to another disciplinary agency, 4 matters were dismissed. We took no action on 2 matters, 1 was continued. Then we had a subcommittee that met regarding the prepaid legal services plan, and based on the recommendations of that subcommittee, we are asking this committee to approve submitting to council tomorrow 2 matters that we are asking to be published. One is to increase the initial and annual registration fees, which are currently $100 to $300. And the second is to amend the definition of prepaid plans, to allow plans to act as intermediary organizations for referring prospective clients to attorneys who are not plan participants by deleting the following sentence from the definition. And this is the sentence that we want to delete. In addition to covered services, they arrange the provision of specified legal services at fees that are less than what a non-member of the plan would normally pay. So basically what that's trying to eliminate is referral services from these prepaid legal plans.
All right, so that's a recommendation from the Authorized Practice Committee to publish those 2 rule amendments. I'm not sure that they were in the materials, right, because of the time. So hopefully they'll be in front of us by tomorrow.
David, we get, those are rule amendments to the administrative rules?
The rule amendment is the elimination of the sentence in the rule. It's a policy for the registration fee, for the initial and annual registration fee. But we feel because we're going to increase the fee by 2-fold, that we probably need to get some feedback from the providers before we do so. And so we're just going to publish a notice that we're proposing to raise the fee.
So we're going to publish both of those, that rule amendment and that policy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so what I was asking is that something we can get before the council in the SharePoint before tomorrow? Because I don't know that anybody other than the people that were in the Authorized Practice Committee know anything about it other than what we just heard about.
I think we could do that. It's very simple, just deletion of the sentence, so we can probably pull that together.
I just want to make sure we've got our eyes got it, T's crossed. All right, so
If
there's
anyone has any questions other than what you just stated, I'm happy to answer.
So there's a motion from the committee that need a second. Does anybody have any questions about these 2, this rule amendment and this policy amendment for publication? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, there's no other action for you guys. Is that correct? All right, thank you. Todd?
The Issues Committee met yesterday and addressed several items. We started with allowing Mark Enriquez to present to us the remainder of the regulatory change subcommittee's report, which he did in an excellent fashion. The upshot of the meeting was that the Issues Committee recommends that the items in the report be referred to the Access to Justice Committee, similar to what we did back in January with the sandbox issue. So the upshot is that we are recommending that the matters addressed in the report be addressed by the Access to Justice Committee once it is established. jumping to that, we recall that back in April, we actually recommended to the executive committee that they establish the Access to Justice Committee, and they deferred that until Mark had completed his presentation. And so the motion from the Issues Committee would be that the creation of an Access to Justice ad hoc committee occur now, because we also discussed the Access to Justice Committee should be a standing committee of the bar, and the Issues Committee recommends that it should be. And so the plan, as I understand it, is to go forward now with the ad hoc committee with the expectation that Alice will bring it for us in October to lead it to establish the standing committee. Is that correct, Alice?
Yes, sir.
So that's my motion.
So, motion from the Issues Committee with regards to allowing us to establish an ad hoc. So it's authority for the officers to start an ad hoc committee called the Access to Justice Committee with the rule amendment coming later. Does anybody have any questions about that request? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Anything else?
We then heard a update from Alan McCoy on the subcommittee on Lincoln Deserts. They are starting their work in earnest now. They've had one committee already. Judge Bell volunteered to join that committee, and I certainly appointed her to that. And so they are now going to go forward with their good work. And then we heard an update from Alice on the work that she's doing on the 9 recommendations that the Diversity Committee, the EI Committee made back in April. So if you have any questions about that grant report, please see Alice, and otherwise that.
You're going to get a short presentation about the Eagle Desert Subcommittee tomorrow. So be there. Good. Thanks to Brian. The Recording Communication Committee, Dorothy.
Yes, thank you. We met yesterday, yes. And we, as you all know, we are continuing our communication efforts. Have not been doing as much live streaming because there, quite frankly, has not been a necessity to do so. Even though we're doing so now, all the meetings are not being live streamed as it has been before. We are still on all the other social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, those things. Maybe TikTok is coming at some point. And we got a great little update of that, some publications about how TikTok can be effective. But we are looking for, as always, topics for the podcast. We are continuing to do those as well, but we need topics for those podcasts. We are continuing our efforts with our new database and membership portal. We got a great report that the membership dues time period went over really, really well. And so we're looking at, continuing with those efforts. And if you, at this point, everybody has probably had to get on the new membership. And it's phenomenal. We are also looking to have some new software for meeting materials and agendas for us that will be much better than SharePoint. And so look out for that soon. And last but not least, we will put in place, well, not last, but we're putting together a message map subcommittee. And so we'll form that soon, and that will be underway. And then last but not least, Brian and Peter both have done a great job of just communication in general. Peter has gone out and done some presentations on the CLE rule amendments. And so he has been received really, really well in the fact that people have appreciated getting that information. And they are looking forward to continuing to get information about that and other things. So as we always try to push, if you're in a district that needs someone to come and speak, please, by all means, let our staff attorneys know that they are always willing to go out and speak to our members. And that's what I have. We don't have any action items.
The message map thing is kind of important, something that the officers heard about in Chicago. And so I think it's going to be a helpful tool for us to get our message out for our continued attempts to be transparent in all we do. We need a common message. So Warren, do you have a motion to make with regards to the Distinguished Service Award?
I do. I'd like to move at this time to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A2 to prevent the premature disclosure of an honorary or a similar award.
Aye.
Just give me a second here.
Sir. Counselors and staff can remain. Thank you. Would like to welcome Bill Wright of the Chief Justice Commission for Professionalism.
We continue to have a real backlog on presenting these awards, but that doesn't mean that we don't want lots more nominations. And so, if you've been thinking about it, don't wait until the day. Let's get these nominations done. And I know that there are several in the works right now, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be thinking about it. All right, so committee, our committee would move that the executive committee approve the nominations discussed in closed session, candidate A and candidate B for presentation of the John B. McMillan Distinguished Service Award, subject to our standard due diligence checks.
Comes as a recommendation from the Distinguished Service Award, so I need a second. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Thank you for your work. I think that there is no other business. Go have fun this afternoon. We'll see you guys at 6:30 at the reception. Be safe.